Hello again. And the retreat goes by fast. So I know there's at least two questions in the chat, which Paul will read to me, but I first wanted to start with a question that somebody sent me a couple of days ago in an email. And they said that they're having some difficulty with poor memory. And they noticed that there's a greed or desire to have their brain working like when they were younger, and also some aversion about being seen as someone who's forgetful. So, a couple of things to say about memory. In Buddhist meditation circles, it's kind of a joke. We talk about Joseph Goldstein used to joke about how your memory gets worse and worse as your retreat life goes on, and it's not just because of the aging process. It's because we're basically getting less attached. And one of the things that they know when they research memory, and I was part of the University of Washington, and we looked at memory in a study I was helping out with, and they found that memory has to do with our emotional charge a lot of times. Because the more emotional we are about something, the more likely often we are to remember it, unless it's a really high stress, then sometimes we'll forget. But emotion and attachment and kind of a clinging actually makes memory more possible. So as we're letting go and we're just letting attach and our emotions are getting more chilled out, our memories are going to get sort of worse. So I guess that's sort of the downfall of meditation. You're less attached. And with any memory stuff, two things. One, you have to think of, is it really a big deal? What you're forgetting. I notice there's a lot of more of the finer details of things, like people's siblings' names, or in my clients, I can't remember as much of the finer details. And, the more I think about it, it's like, so what, right? It's no big deal. If you have a memory issue that's persisting and it's getting worse really quickly and really in a very fast way, you do want to have your memory checked out. And there's so much cool stuff that's available to check memory issues now and to help with memory. There's almost about 60 different conditions that cause memory problems that are reversible. So, like I said, if it feels like it's really a bigger problem than just the Vipassana Buddhist forgetting mind or normal aging, you should go to a clinic, and they do a really great job of looking at all the different factors. That being said, with any kind of aging, anything, whether you're young or old, we're looking at impermanence and loss. And the big question as a practitioner is, how are you meeting change and loss? How are you meeting it? Are you meeting it with fear? Are you meeting it with greed? Our life is really with these impermanent bodies. We're having constant loss, whether we're young or old. And how are you meeting it? And are you doing the fist thing, right? The fighting or the hiding? Oh my God, I don't want to age, right? I talked to this woman at the gym the other day, and I was like, wow, you look great. She goes, I've had 16 surgeries. I was just like, oh my God. Nope, not for me. So it was just like, open hand, open hand. And the more you can relax within change, hearing loss, memory loss, whatever it is, just some kind of disability, emotional disabling things, anxiety, the more you can relax within, the better it is. And it's really how we're meeting this. And remember, like I said, switch to the view of awareness itself. Does awareness itself have memory problems? No, I once asked Adyashanti about this on a retreat. I said, "Oh, what if I get dementia? What about all my practice? What happens to our insights if we get dementia?" It was a really important question to me because my dad died of Alzheimer's disease, and he just laughed. Adyashanti looked at me and he said, "Your true nature never gets dementia. Awareness itself doesn't get dementia. Maybe your character does and your body does." But he said, "Your true awareness can't be affected." So remembering that, and like the practice throughout the day is, how does infinite awareness see this? How does love see this? It's not affected by memory problems. How would love see you forgetting somebody's name or some detail? Love would just laugh. But our character gets bothered by it, doesn't it? So notice the difference between your character and the awareness itself around memory or loss or whatever it is. So that's pretty much all I have to say about memory. That's plenty. um, don't worry about it. Relax. Awareness itself never loses anything. Paul, do you want to go ahead and read the first question?
Sure, Mira.
Thank you.
Is there room for, quote, story or, quote, identity when we ask the question, how does consciousness see this? Is there room for story or identity when we ask the question, how does consciousness see this?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. Yeah, the story and identity can happen within the consciousness. So the way I experience it, almost like when I'll say, I'll try on that, anger. Oh, is awareness is angry? No, wait. And there's the character, and you can see your character is kind of like a factor in consciousness itself, almost like an avatar. So it's kind of where you want to focus. Most of us are totally blended with our character and our story and identity, as you know, Kat, that, it's just constantly blended, right? So it's just that sense that we can move out to the other perspective that's also true, right? I mean, this is where the absolute and the relative kind of come together. On a relative level, we're the character moving about the movie. But if we don't identify with that character, we're just the whole consciousness that's all happening and the awakeness that's all happening. And I had this really cool insight the other day about this. You know how we're really bothered by AI? I mean, some of us are excited about AI, artificial intelligence, and a lot of people are really worried about it, like, oh, it's taking over. And I realized, like, well, we created AI and now it's going to take over us, right? And all of a sudden I had this realization, like, what if you and I, are the AI of awareness itself? So awareness itself, or true nature, love, or the unconditioned created us. And we're its version of AI, like, oh crap, they took themselves really seriously and now they're blowing up the world. And it would just be like, whoa, awareness would be watching you as AI doing your thing and just being like, oh, please let it self destruct sooner than later. And my teacher and I were talking about this. He said everything, the nature of everything is to see, these illusion upon illusion gets created, and it's meant to destroy itself like AI, to destroy us so we can get back to the source. You're meant, like, as it gets more and more fractal like, it's meant to kind of double back around to the origin because it gets more and more untrue, right? AI is one remove from us, and we're that one remove from pure awareness, and eventually that all that falsity is going to self-destruct. and meant to, so we can know what's the source of all this? What's the origin? The unconditioned is what the Buddha talked about, but for you it might be unconditional love. So yeah, thank you. Hopefully that answers your question. If not, you can write another one. Somebody, I can see the questions, Paul, so I'll read. Will you please send a bibliography here? You reference 4 or 5 book readings. I'd like to look at them. Okay. In my talk, I assume I did that. Yeah. I'll put that. Maybe I'll send it out when I send an email with the links for the talk. Last question here is why does doing more meditation often release sadness, tears, etc.? And does the process of awakening bring one to a place where there's less of that? Yes. Beautifully heartfelt question. Yes, meditation does release more sadness. Sometimes more joy too. We feel things. We feel more happiness too. We're learning to feel more because normally we're just really shut down on that horizontal living automatic pilot. So meditation starts dropping us into the more felt sense, which means we're gonna feel more sadness. We're gonna feel life more, and there's so much here. There's so much here. My teacher Ajashanti talks about going through a phase where everything moved him to tears, right? And he said he was at this dock in the Bay Area where him and his wife were hanging out, and this man came walking down, this really heavy set man, and he was yelling at his kids, and he had a big bag of cream puffs, and he was stuffing them in his mouth, not offering any to his kids, and just yelling. And I just like tears were rolling down his face. And his wife looked at him and she said, "Oh, honey, is it the guy with the cream puffs?" And he's like, "Yeah," like just so moved by everything. And also, the whole of the spiritual path is grief work. We're constantly seeing, oh, I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not that. I'm not the body, I'm not the mind. So there is a sadness that gets released with everything. There's a poignant sadness because the whole of the spiritual path is grief work, is just working with less and less and less and less loss. And the Buddha said at the end of his journey, he said, I gained absolutely nothing from pure enlightenment because there was no one there to have anything. It just less and less and less. And does this process bring one to a place where there's less sadness? Yes, for sure. There's just what happens is as some of all that sadness, and we often carry around a lot of sadness that we haven't dealt with, as that sadness starts to release, like, the pressure on a Coke bottle, as you're releasing it, just more, the sadness releases naturally through the practice. The love starts to fill in the bottle. So as that gas is coming out, you just start to fill up with more and more love and joy and connection, and the oneness starts to take over. So as all the difficulties of separate living, seeing yourself as a separate being and with our histories and our traumas, and we start to unburden that, and then the love of the oneness takes over. Just during the break, I was watching these little birds on my clothesline, They're just so happy, it's like, you and the bird, same thing, no difference. And it all just becomes part of this love of this one you. So um, you will have really strong emotions, but it'll be the heart will just take over like gangbusters. So I guess you have to be ready for that. Most sadness is in the mind, it's the past. Fear is almost always in the future. Fear is the future. Always. I mean, check out and see for yourself. When you're in a fear thought, you're in the future. Like my friend, when he was about to be eaten by a shark, he wasn't afraid. And sadness is almost always the past, which is fine. We're trying to release that, but just check that out and see. The present moment now is just calm and often just awareness and love. Okay, another question. Sorry, Paul, I'm taking over your job. I have told people in my life who say, um, why is life so hard? And I say, because it is. Very good. If you accept that you will be much, if you accept that you will be much happier. However, I recently felt a lot of mental pain from an illness. How do I face pain with loving kindness instead of fear and sadness? Um, I'd suggest, doing what we talked about this retreat. Watch when you're facing it from the I perspective and switch out your words and switch out your perspective. Instead of saying, I'm facing sadness, infinite love is sad. Well, no, the character's sad within infinite love, but how would just loving awareness be with this? But with anything, wherever you're at, like I said, relax within it, bring a lot of tenderness. You've been through this a bunch before, it'll pass like a storm. So treat these periods almost like a storm. Know that storms always pass, and sometimes you have to batten down the hatches and just breathe to get through it. But other times you can just relax and know the outer edges of the storm are here. The you that's outside the storm is way bigger than the storm. The awareness you that holds this storm of depression, sadness, whatever it is also here now. Any blue sky outside the storm is also here. So just, pendulate to that and know that this you that's not the storm is here too. And, oftentimes it's just waiting it out. It's, if you're patient, everything passes. And, they say that patience is the way to awakening and enlightenment for all of us. We just keep on hanging in there and seeing that bigger picture and having a sincerity to meet this sadness or this moment over and over and over again. Don't give up. That's the key. Don't give up. It's just like a storm. You guys have had a lot of storms where you are in different parts of the US, so just hanging in there with it with love and courage and compassion and calm. Okay, another question about dementia. This person was really glad I addressed that question. Asking myself, what is here now that doesn't die? And thinking about my mom who had dementia when she died. I find my connection to her is filtered through the experience of seeing her mind get so confused at the end. I hope this makes sense. Is there anything you can say to clarify this very confused question? It's not confused. Again, your mom's body, mind, character got confused at the end. And that's painful to watch. And it certainly is painful to be a part of. That's why we're practicing. So we don't blend with the character. And even if we go in dementia, I'm not super clear how this would all work. I know Adyashanti was confident. Awareness doesn't ever get dementia. I mean, I guess we'll see. Um, there have been great teachers who've had dementia and strokes. Ajahn Chah had a stroke and he had stroke-related dementia, and then a famous Zen teacher did too. But supposedly all the students that were with these teachers said that there was something else there that didn't have the dementia. So we're practicing now to know this you that's kind of alongside the body, the mind stuff, the pure awareness. And maybe alongside isn't the right word. Think about, again, the waves. Your mom was up in the waves when she died. Everybody has the ability to drop down. And I'm seeing with my friend who I'm helping in her dying process. Like, she's been up in the waves in fear and worry. I mean, everybody does. My friend who's a hospice nurse, he points out, he's like, Amita, your whole body is like a machine shutting down. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be like, oh, no problem, right? The machine is like dying. And he says that there's a lot that goes along with that. So you can be, those big waves, dropping down just to being with that rhythm of breath, that open hand. That's why my friend did the just let your hand open. Oh, now it's closed. Just let your hand open. You're trying to get that woman's body to relax. Then when she did, she passed. But, as meditation students, if we can be at the very bottom, in the end, I mean, my teacher says this, and I'm seeing this more and more. He says, Amita, nothing is happening. Nothing is happening. So in the end, when you're at the bottom of the ocean, you're seeing someone die, someone be born. There is this place, and it's a big jump for some of you maybe, but just keep it in mind that nothing's happening. It's all one thing. Who would die? Who would be born? Who would get dementia? Things are happening, but at the same time, again, the relative and absolute, nothing's happening. And sometimes when I get really freaked out, I remember that. Just like in a dream. So if you want an analogy, when we're sleeping at night, we have this huge dream. People die, people get dementia, some monster's chasing you, there's a war, there's a person you love. And then you wake up and you go, oh, I dreamed the whole thing. Nothing happened, right? So it's possible this life might be like that. The awareness is dreaming you. The big dream is dreaming you. Again, we're the AI of awareness. It's like then awareness just wakes up to, oh, nothing happened. I dreamed I was Amita. Cool. Now, in a dream, you don't want to have a nightmare. You do the best you can in the dream world. Who would, I wouldn't want, when your dog's barking in a dream, you wake him or her up, right? Because they're distressed. So you don't just let suffering necessarily continue, even in the dream world. There's one more comment. The woman who asked about her mom and dementia said, I could see my mom becoming infinite love, as she also seemed to be getting more and more confused with her thinking. Oh, that's so beautiful. Yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about. You got the character decaying and dissolving. And then at the same time, a movement towards something else, the infinite love coming up and taking over. And that's what it's doing with us in our practice too, is our character dissolving more and more, becoming less and less this and that and everything we identify with, that um, infinite love or the unconditions coming from behind and just taking occupancy. So, yes, you too will dissolve in infinite love. And, the point of practice is hopefully we know that without just 1 minute to go in our life. We could have a couple of years to enjoy it. We don't have that 1 minute, oh, I'm infinite love, yay. And I had that happen. I helped a person die, and very last minute she saw, oh my God, it's all love. And she started saying that. And I was like, yeah, I kind of want to know that before the last minute. Not that it matters, right? But then she carries that into when it's done, it's done. I guess it doesn't matter, but it'd be fun to play with knowing yourself as infinite love with a couple years left in the body. Maybe some of you think, nope, out of here. Oh, hey, Paul, are there any more messages I'm not seeing? I think that's it. And people can raise their hands if they want. Oh, here's another message. A few years back, when I was in the thick of my work, I observed that many of my comments were prefaced with I and me, yes. I could see myself doing this and yet still had difficulty changing course, and I found it super irritating and tiring. It felt annoyingly obsessed. Through meditation, this is lessened, but it still happens. Character out of control. Question mark, any thoughts? If you do that getting rid of the I thing with the I and making it another horizontal doing, it will become another drudgery of self. So the point is switching out the pronoun, just do it lightly and occasionally. Like I have it written on a chalkboard in my kitchen so I just can see it. Something really simple where you're not like hounding yourself about it. But just like, oh, right, what's the perspective of awareness right now? Or how is infinite love, eating lunch, taking out the trash, the awareness. So it's meant to create more lightness. If it's not doing that, then, experiment with something else. These are just things that I find quite useful and some of my students enjoy doing, but might not be the right practice for you. You want it to create whatever practice you do to create more openness and more joy and more like that sunlight quality. So again, if that's not doing that, it could be because you're trying to do it with the I. Infinite awareness is practicing no I. Easy. I doesn't exist in infinite awareness. So it's pretty simple. Someone commented right now, I've used this one to replace this one, quote, this one to replace I. Seems to work without getting too metaphysical. Yeah, that's fine. Again, the key is what lightens you up and what allows you to unstick from the me perspective. Remember, unsticking, mindfulness is all about unsticking from the movie. And when we can unstick from the movie, we can see more of what's true. The movie's happening in all this. The movie of me is in all this. Well, where's the source of this? So it's really, the Buddha talked about the word investigation. When we unstick from the I perspective, we can have more investigation and can have more love and curiosity and awe. That's the point of it all. Remember, meditation is love. Awareness is love. Awakening is great love. from Deepama. So follow what lights you up, what allows more joy. Um, Ultimately, there are no practices. I was talking with my teacher about this the other day. Practice really presumes an I and a separate you and I doing, and practice can be very horizontal. So that's why it's tricky. Um, and yet, there are things that we can evolve into more and more. Yeah, and it's so beautiful that you shared about COVID because so many of us have had to work with the mind states around COVID. A lot of
Mm,
people have gotten it. So you so beautifully shared that process. As a meditator, it looks like mindfulness and it looks like where we get caught into those thought pits, right? Oh,
yeah.
shoot, I'll be sick for a year, thought pit. You went, but then you popped yourself out of it. You labeled it, you realized what you were doing. Can I absolutely know that's true? I'll be disabled for a year. You brought that kind of investigation to it. You saw you were in the future. Yay. I mean, this is such a great example of ways of how to use the practice over and over again.
Mm,
Again, with these changes or losses. And then the practice allows us to relax a little bit more, right? When you don't blend with
mm,
the fear. And so then we can see more of what's true. We're back to that again. And oh, well, if this happens, I'll meet it. I know, I'll learn from it. It's such a beautiful thing, Otherwise, we're just caught in that whirlwind of the shitstorm, basically, of, one emotion after the other and a fear. And then, oh my God, I think I'll go take all these drugs and then I'll do this and that. And not that one doesn't do that, but not from a place of fear.
mm.
Or reaction, right? So, really, they say that the ability of this practice is to act rather than react. Mindfulness gives us that ability, and even asking the awareness itself versus the I gives us the ability to act rather than react.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for sharing your process with that. It's very beautiful, and I'm glad that you're feeling better now. Yeah.
Thanks.
May it continue. And someone shared, I too have been quite ill for much of the year, and sometimes that lightness just isn't there. Yeah. It's all arising in consciousness, you have reminded us. The sun always shines. Yeah. And I don't ever want to downplay the poignancy of chronicity when something goes on and on. I mean, I had chronic severe depression for 20, 40 years almost. And just the drudgery and that mind, that poem I read about the mind being battered, relentlessly battered mind, helpless. And we have to bring tenderness to that. And it doesn't just take one time, Susan, it takes many, many times. Where that fist, and then we open the hand, and then that fist, and then we open the hand, and then we just think we can't go on, and doubt, right? Hiding, and then we open that hand. And it's such a poignant, it's really the process of love. So don't think about the end point. Think about the process of love as the opening and closing of the heart to everything. And whether it comes or not, that we end up in just the pure consciousness and that freedom. You know, this kind of movement is the most important thing, and this is the love too. It's not later how we meet when we're just down, down, down. One of my students called it face down in the ditch. How you meet that. And how we get up again, even though we get hit down with chronic illness, you just have that being pushed back down in the ditch. It's such a amazing process of courage and compassion and self-love and trust, you know. And that is, I would say that's it. Don't think later or more, just realize just bringing that big heart to that. Yeah. Sending you big blessings. Our thoughts and our metta and our loving kindness is with you and every single one of you who might be dealing with anything chronic. Yeah. It's I got Lyme's disease and from a Lyme tick when I lived at the meditation center. So ironically, as a result of a retreat, and it's a chronic illness that comes and goes. And you learn to have a relationship with it, that ultimately it has to become a loving relationship. Because if it's not, there's that fighting or hiding, it doesn't work. And that doesn't mean you always love it, but you find your peace with it. That's the key, to find your peace with it, whether it's depression, Lyme's disease, long-term COVID, a difficult person in your life. It's finding your peace, or you yourself. A lot of us can't find peace with ourselves. The practice helps us find peace with everything. So I think that's about it. We're pretty much out of time and there's no more questions that I see. So it's been such a beautiful half a day with you all. I really appreciate you showing up, and we're all that big flotilla coming in together. Paul just put up my donation link and it's in your emails. Thank you, Paul. Yeah, we're all doing this together, and I'm with you, and whatever I learn, I'm happy to share the merit of that with all of you. And thank you again. Thank you, Paul, my sidekick, and Jeanette, Jeanette, Paul's wife, lends him to me. And each one of you, thank you so much. I really appreciate it that you're here, and we'll see you again. I'm doing something for Nevada in May, and so maybe if you want to join in on that, I'll send out a notice to everyone for May. But do these practices, do your microdosing if you can, and it's not too drudgery. All right, aloha.